Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And so glad to have you along with us as we are now officially in summer. It is summertime, not just because Mother Nature says it's summertime, but it's also summer because the calendar says it's summer. We've kind of known that for a while now, haven't we? It has been an interesting summer so far, summer season, weather-wise. Mother Nature is just, you can't see it, but I'm shaking my head. She can be wicked. We're still in a drought, pretty bad drought. I mean, some areas have seen some rain, but not enough to make up for drought conditions. And a lot of northeast winds, which the northeast winds have kept it a little cooler. That's, good because the fields and lawns would be drying up completely if we didn't have a little bit of a cool northeast breeze. But it sure makes it hard to get out on my beloved Saginaw Bay walleye fishing. Only good thing about a northeast wind, consistent northeast wind, is it does push some cooler water from the outer bay into the inner bay and hopefully keep those fish in close to shore, in tight, for longer later in the season. But more on that coming up. I also have to do a little bit of a programming note here. And I'm just, honestly, I'm sick about this. Many of our stations aired the wrong show last week, and it was no fault of theirs at all. I would not do that to you as a listener. I would not repeat a show. I take this too seriously. I value your time too much to waste your time by playing the same show 2 weeks in a row. I've been doing this more than 30 years, and I have never missed a show. This is my job. It's a fun job. It's the best job in the world. But this is my job, and I take it very seriously. I take your loyalty and your time very seriously. And I would not waste your time by repeating a show. However, sometimes things happen. And I did make a new show for last week, rest assured. And some of our stations heard it, but many of you did not. Because there are a lot of moving parts in getting this show to you, that sometimes technical glitches happen that are beyond anybody's control. Things happen. I get that. Things happen. And because things happened last week that really were beyond the control of anybody, a lot of you didn't get to hear last week's show. And I apologize for that. Honestly, it hurts me. So I will just say very briefly, because I've had a lot of people ask. Last week, I was telling a story about my Ontario bear hunt. And I won't go into detail because I won't bore you. But yes, I did get my Ontario bear. After 4 days in the bush, 4 days of sitting in a blind and enjoying every minute of it, the last 2 hours of the last night of the hunt, a bear did come in, and I took him, and he's now being made into brats by my friends at Michigan Brand Meats. So again, if you heard a repeat show last week, I apologize. It was nobody's fault. I did make a new show, but things happen. Here's the word of advice on this. If you hear a repeat radio show, that's the week you want to listen to the podcast version of the show, because I have direct control on the upload of the podcasts. So if you hear the radio show being a repeat, and it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes technical glitches happen, go to the podcast version of the show. Okay, so when I got back from my bear hunt, I told you I was going to start fishing. And I have been, and man, have I been having fun. It is so good to get back out on Saginaw Bay. I got a late start. So good to get out there on the new angler quest and chase those Saginaw Bay walleyes. I have a relationship with that fishery that goes back a long, long time. I was thinking about this the other day. I think one of the reasons I'm fascinated by this fishery, a couple of reasons. Number one, it's in my backyard. And number two, I've been watching this fishery develop, and I have been covering this fishery way back to my days of television news on the reintroduction of the walleye and the resurgence of the fishery, and I just love it. And I had a chance to fish with the new chief of the Fisheries Division of the Michigan DNR. That was a very, very interesting trip. In fact, Randy Claramunt is going to join us here. I think he's going to join us in the next segment after the break. But it was so much fun to pick his brain and to listen to his thoughts on this fishery. He's in charge of all the fisheries now in the state of Michigan. I found that to be very, very interesting. Fishing has been good on Saginaw Bay. Yes, in my beloved skinny water. And no, I'm not running crawlers, because I don't need to. I have nothing against night crawlers. My perfect day would be to fish 10 feet of water with number 7 flicker shads or flicker minnows, or maybe even sneak in a good old-fashioned Hottentot, running those baits from 20 to 50 feet behind the boards. It is so cool to be fishing so shallow that you can bring your boards up, your offshore boards, and net a fish while it's still hooked to the board. Then you know you're fishing skinny. Then you know you're fishing tight. I just love it. I love it. And you know, you would think that after this many years of being out there that I would be a better angler than I am. And I admit that. I get outfished a lot of days. But I catch my share, and nobody has more fun fishing than I do. You know why? You know, one of the reasons is I don't take it very serious. I go out there to have fun. I go out there to enjoy the day. I go out there to enjoy the experience. I go out there to enjoy the friendship and the camaraderie of the people that I'm fishing with. And if we get fish, that's just a bonus. You know, I've fished with people in the past where if you lose a fish at the net, it's a big deal and they get all mad and upset. Not on my boat. I don't care. It's just a bonus. Wednesday Night Live. Now, those of you who have been around for a while know about Wednesday Night Live. There are 2 scheduled live streams that I do every week. One of them is Wednesday mornings at 8:45 live from the Outdoor Magazine radio studio. The other one, and that's called Behind the Mic, because I'm sitting behind the microphones. I could call it Mike Behind the Mic. And the other one is Wednesday Night Live. That's Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. And these are live streams on my social media outlets. Now, last week, I was supposed to do one with Brad Dupuis, Mr. Angler Quest, and Bob Ransom of Primal Outdoors. We wanted to get out on Saginaw Bay and fish walleye and do a Wednesday Night Live there. But Mother Nature and her northeast winds, again, did not allow it, so I did a live stream from my Angler Quest sitting at the boat. Next week, it looks like we're going to have somebody from the Michigan Wildlife Council on Wednesday Night Live. And then looking 2 weeks down the road, a week and a half down the road, Wednesday night, July 5th, if Mother Nature will allow, if these northeast winds will slow down a little bit, I am going to be out there with Mr. Angler Quest, Brad Dupuis. Bob Ransom of Primal can't make that trip, but we're going to be joined by Nick DeShano of Offshore Tackle. How cool is that? You know, talking about cool experiences, fishing with the chief of the Fisheries Department of the Michigan DNR And then also fishing with Brad Dupuis, Mr. Angler Quest, Nick DeShano of the DeShano family of offshore tackle. That's one of the greatest things about this job. It's allowed me to do some cool things, yes, but to get to meet some very interesting people. Coming up on this week's show after the break, Randy Claramunt, the new Fisheries Director for the DNR, joins me. We'll talk about our fishing trip on Saginaw Bay and more. Then Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews in our second hour, Captain John Littlefield of Littlefield Sport Fishing. He is a guy who taught my charter captain's class, and he's in the process of buying the company to teach more people about getting their charter captain's class. Then Nick Green of MUCC checks in. He had quite a weekend last week. Man, he was into the fish. We'll talk about that. This week's Ask Avery segment is a question that Fisheries Chief Randy Claramunt asked me. He said, Mike, what are your most memorable fishing trips here on Saginaw Bay? And I had to think about it. Well, I have been thinking about it, and there are 3 trips specifically that stand out in my mind, and I'll tell you about those. And in our third hour, Richard P. Smith is not happy at all with the deer hunting regulation changes for the fall. He thinks there are a lot of politics involved, and I tend to go along with him on this one. We'll talk about that and more. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. Send me an email. Let me know what's on your mind. Let me know what you're thinking. Questions, comments, criticisms. Send me your Ask Avery questions, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's going to be a busy show, going to be a good show. So glad you're with us. That's all coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on WZTK in Alpena. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ 1090 AM and north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. You know what's coming out, right? This is the sound right here of my Rapid River knife opening. I pulled it out of my pocket just to prove to you that I do indeed carry a Rapid River knife every day, all day. I think a knife is one of the most valuable tools that an outdoorsman or woman can have. And I choose to work with Rapid River because it's family-owned, Michigan-based, quality products, lifetime guarantee. I would encourage you, if you can, to stop by their showroom on US 2, just east of Rapid River. And if not, go to the website rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us, and you will see what I mean. I told you in the first segment I had a very, very enjoyable day on Saginaw Bay with a good friend of mine, Gus Voida of Pizza Sam's in Midland, and the chief of the Fisheries Department, the Fisheries Division for the Michigan DNR. Now think about this. What a cool experience it was for me to fish with the head fish guy for the state of Michigan. It was an honor. But you know what? It was also a lot of fun because Randy Claramunt is a really nice guy, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Randy, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Mike, I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here, and it was an honor to fish with you as well.
And it was fun, wasn't it? I mean, there's something about fishing and good conversation and catching a few fish. Man, it's hard to beat.
Yeah, and Saginaw Bay, what a fishery it is. Just incredible opportunities, and I think my favorite part of the day, Mike, was when you get those moments where you can't keep lines in the water, and we had that frenzy going on, and only had a few lines of the water at times, and having things like that happen when you're out there in the water with good people like yourself and Gus, that was just, it's incredible. So I'm glad we had an opportunity to make that happen.
Well, we were talking about a lot of things on the water that day, but that Saginaw Bay fishery, to me, is fascinating. I've been covering it and fishing it for 35, 40 years now, whatever the number has been. But you told me it is one of the most, what's the term, well-studied or best documented fisheries in Michigan, Randy?
Yeah, that's correct. We have, in most cases, we don't have the opportunity to collect data on fisheries. We kind of manage statewide, and Wish we could do a lot more. But in Saginaw Bay, because of the importance of the fishery, not only do we have surveys and we assess the populations, but we have multiple surveys throughout the lifespan of a walleye so that we can track, what's going on with the fishery, and if we see any red flags, take actions to protect it. So, yeah, just like you, I grew up in the Thumb, so I've seen the fishery really grow, and this is a great recovery story, and we want nothing but to see it continue indefinitely in the future.
Well, there was some, question when you guys, the powers that be, lowered the size limit down to 13 inches and increased the daily creel limit to 8 fish. There was concern how these guys are going to decimate this fishery. What impact have you seen, Randy?
Yeah, and part of those regulations, we worked hand in hand with stakeholders, so they knew what we were trying to accomplish, and they helped us set goals. And part of it was the walleye were kind of eating themselves out of house and home for a little bit. Now, we're not seeing that, and I don't know about you, Mike, but I cleaned some of the fish we caught, and I like to look at every individual fish, and the inside of those fish they were covered with fat. They looked very healthy, great condition, and that was exactly the logic going into the liberalized regulation, that we wanted to try to increase harvest because the prey resources were becoming limited. Since then, we've seen recovery of prey. We've also embarked with our federal counterparts to introduce Cisco and Outer Saginaw Bay to diversify the prey base. Although that might not do a lot for walleye, diets and consumption, we know that having a diverse prey fish community is really the best for a stable fishery. So you're right. There was concern that the liberalization might harm the fishery, but we actually have seen it promote some health. And as you and I talked about, and we saw Gus catch that 8-inch walleye, which is almost as big as the lures we were using. There's a lot of recruits coming in.
There was also concern about opening the Saginaw River to year-round fishing. This spring was the first year for that. Is it too early to say what the impact of that was, Randy? Do you have a feel for it?
Well, we did extend some surveys and creel surveys to be able to estimate, what kind of harvest it was. But anybody who was out there knew that this spring was a tough spring for fishing. So as far as the impact, I think we'll get the data crunched and get the information out there to anglers, but we're not going to see a huge increase in overall harvest just because the fishing conditions were poor. That being said, we don't want to say that, there's no impact of opening up the lower Saginaw River and let's walk away. We want to keep monitoring it and make sure that, if there is any signs that this population is becoming stressed, then we'll take action and work with stakeholders to make sure that the population is sustainable. That's what we want.
So what's the number you're putting on the number of fish in Saginaw Bay, walleye in Saginaw Bay right now?
Yeah, so, prior to recovery, we were probably a few 100,000 fish, and now we're talking in the millions. So, the estimate's around 5 million fish, and there's a lot of variation around that estimate, but, that's a healthy population for Saginaw Bay, although some people might argue, that's too many, and we don't really view it that way. We kind of look at the absolute number is really dependent upon how much food they have, how much habitat they have. So, and we don't have a lot of data to know what the walleye population was 100 years ago, right? So could it go to 10 million? Would Saginaw Bay support that? And that's part of our monitoring, is just to make sure that, we're not setting an absolute target in terms of we're going to get to some level. We're going to just monitor both the walleye and the prey and the habitat to say, is it in balance, really?
So how does that Saginaw Bay population compare to, say, Southeast Michigan, Lake St. Clair, Detroit River, Lake Erie? What's the comparison there?
Yeah, when you start to look at Saginaw Bay compared to Lake Erie and the Detroit River, a lot of Michigan anglers know this well, but that population is more like 60 to 80 million walleyes. So, wow. Again, in contrast, the Saginaw Bay population is strong, but it certainly, could expand, based on comparisons to Lake Erie and the Detroit River. That being said, they're different systems. There's different dynamics, so we don't want to make that a goal either. But, yeah, that is a great population as well, and I know a lot of anglers take advantage of the Detroit River, western Lake Erie. Great fishery.
Walleye, of course, just one of the species you're responsible for. You got a lot on your plate these days, Randy.
Yeah, I could say that, but I have a lot of help, a lot of great staff. But yeah, Michigan's got its challenges just in the sense that, we have a lot of outdated regulations. We have a lot of outdated statute. And we're kind of on a flat funding structure. So every year cost goes up, our capacity to do work goes down. And it's as simple as that. But, like I said, we have a lot of strong supporters and people that know how valuable Michigan's fisheries are. And we all share that goal. So I'm very optimistic. We'll be able to, address whatever comes at us together. And, people in Michigan, they care about the fishery. That's the best starting point you can have.
Can we talk about consent decree at all? Is there anything in that situation you can talk about, or is the gag order still in place?
No, we can definitely talk about it, and I encourage people that might be confused about where this is. That a lot of the documents are in public record in the federal court in Kalamazoo, so they can look them up online. They can definitely do their own research, and so I can field questions for you in terms of the proposed decree. Now, it hasn't been signed by the judge, so it is still a proposed agreement. The Coalition of Michigan Sportsmen and Women, they're have some opposition to components of the consent decree, and I empathize with those, as well as one of the tribes is also in opposition to it. So, that's kind of the status of it, and something that as a new chief, I'm going to try to work through and do the best for our anglers in terms of how to make this work.
So, just to characterize, it's not a perfect proposed solution. Is it the best that we could hope to get at this point?
Yeah, I would say it's even more complicated than that, Mike, in the sense a lot of times anglers will come to me and they'll say, we don't think the tribe should have fishing rights. And, that was agreed to long ago, right, and upheld by both 79 Judge Fox decision, but also the 85 consent decree and the 2000 consent decree. So the fact that the tribes have fishing rights in the Great Lakes is really already established. And then it comes down to, really, what are the major components of an agreement to try to work with the tribes on this? And it's really three things, Mike. It's protecting fishing rights. And what I mean by that is both tribal and state. So we don't have the right to tell the tribes, hey, we're going to take an area, you can't fish here. And nor should they tell our anglers that. So the agreement protects those fishing rights. That's established, the proposed agreement. The second one is really protecting the resource. And, I would say this is where a lot of the disagreement about the proposed decree comes in hand. Does it protect the resource? Because if you don't protect the resource, you don't protect the fisher, right? And so, I think as we work through that, all I can say in that regard is that, it's my commitment, and we have a legal obligation, I do, as chief of fisheries, to make sure the resource is protected and that this agreement does it if it's implemented in its current state. The last one is really allocation. It's kind of like if there's allowable surplus of harvestable fish, here's the pie, and we divide it up. And when you look at the proposed consent decree, the challenge with allocation is you might say, well, it's pretty simple. Just, give the tribes half the fish and we get half the fish, and then we're all said and done. But you can't, estimate how many fish there are. Often it's a very dynamic system, right? So how big is the pie is even a question. But then I'll just kind of conclude with this. Imagine that if we did know how many fish there were, and here's your allocation, Mike, but we don't trust each other. So we're going to go into take turns taking bites out of the pot. You're going to go into a dark room, take some spoon or something, take a bite of the pie and leave. And at the end, we're going to try to say, well, was it fair how much each of us got?
Randy, listen, I hate to interrupt you right there, but I have to. We got to take a break. We're talking Randy Claramunt, Chief of the Fisheries Division for the Michigan DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. More after a quick break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan Tracker and Angler Quest headquarters. For more information, check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. Linwood Beach can be a great place to splash your boat and head out into Saginaw Bay walleye fishing. Now, I was out last week on Saginaw Bay. We were fishing out of the mouth of the Saginaw River, so I was not at Linwood Beach this particular time, but I was fishing with Randy Claramunt, who is the chief of the Fisheries Division for the Michigan DNR. He's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Randy, I had to cut you off there. You were making your one last point. Do you think you got that across, or you want to follow up on it?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of glad I was going down a rabbit hole, so I would just conclude in regards to allocation. If this proposed consent decree is really supposed to deal with allocation as a third point, you can't do that without having adequate reporting and timely information. You know, we talked about how we have so many surveys of the Saginaw Bay fishery because of its importance. The proposed decree attempts to address the idea that information needs and reporting have to be updated, have to be timely, and that's the intent behind it. And I'll say one last thing, and that is reporting in a way that's productive to build a partnership with the tribes rather than reporting in a way that ends up causing conflict within the relationships. And that's trying to simplify a lot of technical details there, but I hope that helps answer at least some of the ideas behind the proposed Great Lakes Consent Decree.
Oh, it does. It's such a complicated, convoluted, important issue that it's hard to talk about in just a couple of minutes, but I appreciate you doing that. Sure. What else is on your radar? What are you excited about? What are you worried about, Randy?
Yeah, you know, I'll build off the consent decree just to say, like, you know, one of the things I'm worried about is, again, a lot of fisheries statute that is really outdated, and one of them has to do with managing our commercial fisheries. So, you know, working with stakeholders to really hopefully get some legislation passed that gives me the tools as a fisheries chief to basically manage all fisheries in Michigan, whether it be spear fishing, commercial fishing, or general recreational angling. So, yeah, we're really going to need support for that, and that there's a lot to say about that one as well. But, you know, we have other issues in terms of invasive species, our funding structure, habitat restoration. As you said, Mike, it's pretty busy, but, you know, a lot of great people out there working both with the Fisheries Division, but also stakeholders doing work across Michigan. So I just want to extend a thanks to everyone that really supports us and is trying to protect and enhance our fisheries because it's that important. Now
in this new job, I know you're being pulled all kinds of different directions. In fact, as we are talking right now, you're in Canada doing a presentation to the folks over there. Do you, we were out on Saginaw Bay the other day, but do you still get time to fish, Randy, or are you so busy managing fish that your fishing time has been cut into?
You know, it has a little bit, but that's okay because when I get out with great people and have such an amazing time that it kind of makes up for it. So, you know, I envision that I will keep doing that, and I've got trips planned to the Fox River and the UP, and hope to get over to Lake Huron and fish. And yeah, I still have a lot of good intentions. I'll put it that way, Mike.
When you look at the fisheries in general here in Michigan, well, you know, I tend to look at things from a walleye perspective. And, you know, people talk about the good old days. Randy, I feel like we're living in the good old days right now.
It's true. When you look at the diversity of fishing, I often talk about the fact that you feel haunted sometimes when you know there's so much good fishing happening right now in these different areas, and you got to make these hard choices. Like, do I go inland trout fishing or do I go bass fishing in Lake Michigan? I mean, it's amazing. You're right. And, you know, we have seen decline in angler numbers, although this year we kind of turned the corner a little bit as well. And, you know, I think the more we promote our fishery, we know how amazing it is. You kind of spoke to not only the walleye, but just the diverse and incredible opportunities in Michigan.
What is it, real quick before we let you go, the topic that you're presenting there in Ontario? What do the folks over there want to learn from us here in Michigan?
in a nutshell, it's building partnerships. It really is. It's with, there's great researchers that across the U.S. and Canada. The more we can bring those partnerships to Michigan, the better tools we'll have for management, and really the better our fisheries will be. So that's my goal today in Canada, is to build partnerships with university researchers and the government, as I do with Michigan stakeholders as well.
Randy, listen, I really appreciate your time. It was a lot of fun to spend the day on Saginaw Bay with you. I think that, I know a lot of people are very excited to have you in as the fisheries chief, and I wish you nothing but luck, and I hope our paths cross again soon.
Let's do it again sometime, Mike. It was a ball. I'll
look forward to it. Randy Claramunt, the chief of the Fisheries Division for the Michigan DNR, the website for the DNR, michigan.gov/DNR, michigan.gov/DNR. I think it's very cool to have a guy in a position of authority like this who has worked his way up through the ranks. He is a Michigan guy. He has fished Michigan waters all of his life. He's very intimately involved in fishing. He knows the background. He knows the knowledge. And again, it was really cool to be able to just kind of pick his brain there for a little while. Much of it off the record. Some of the best conversations you'll have will be in the woods or on the water, right? So I enjoyed that trip very much. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Mag. And by the way, you can see pictures of that trip on my Facebook page and my Instagram feed as well. So you can put a face to the name of Randy Claramunt. We'll take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll wrap up this first hour with Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews. Their big outdoor weekend's coming up fast. Their most recent cover of their magazine is pretty interesting, too. Details on that after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. The Outdoor Magazine show in Carroll on WKYO 1360 AM, also WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in, let's see, where should we go? Let's go to Tawas. WIOS 1480 AM, 106.9 FM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Escanaba on WCHT 600 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. VersaSkins owner Paul Perone has a great concept. Why buy a bunch of expensive sets of hunting clothes with different camo patterns when you can buy one good quality set and snap on and zip on an outer skin of a different pattern? It's like the best of all worlds. Check them out online at versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. I want to turn our attention now to what I consider Michigan's premier outdoor publication, Woods-n-Waternews, woods-n-waternews.com. They've been around as long as I have, which is a long, long time. Tom Campbell, one of the guys behind Woods-n-Waternews these days, joins us on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Tom, I'm sure you guys there at the office just have your feet up, you're back, you're sipping coffee, you're looking out the window and just relaxing and enjoying life.
Absolutely, yeah. Summertime, right?
Yeah.
Sounds great, Mike. Yeah, we got a little event coming up in just a little more than 2 months, so that's taking a little bit of time, but it's a labor of love, that's for sure. We love the outdoor weekend, and September 8th, 9th, and 10th at the Eastern Michigan Fairgrounds this year. It should be a good one. We're trying to do some different things and new things, so we want everybody to come out for sure.
And again, I want to stress to people, we talk about this time of year. This is a great venue, in my opinion, for the little guy, the new company, to get their product, to get their services in front of a bunch of outdoor-oriented people. Do you have room still, or has this turned into something for all the big guys and the little guys can't get in? There's no room anymore.
No, you're absolutely right. We build it on that little guy, and we're going to continue with that, even though we have some great big vendors too, but we always will have a room in our exhibitor tent, our exhibitor buildings for the smaller guy, and it's reasonable rates for the exhibit booth. So we encourage everybody, like you said, it's a great place to start your product, to get your product ideas out in front of 15,000 sportsmen and in a weekend. So yeah, that's exactly what the Woods-n-Waternews Outdoor Weekend's all about, is trying to get those new products going, and it's a fun, no pressure type event. outdoors. So it's a good thing for everybody for sure.
Seminars this year again?
Yeah, we'll be continuing. You know, we've adopted Adam Lewis, and he's been our main guy now with the deer hunting. And in fact, he's got a great story in the July issue, which you should find on your favorite newsstand real fast too, Mike. And talks about a new technique, and he calls it deer hunting backwards. So you'll have to check that out. It's some good.
That's got my attention already, right there.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, so of course he'll be there, and we're building that seminar area. And this year at the Outdoor Weekend, for the first time in a long time, we're going to have a lumberjack show. The Paul Bunyan Lumberjack Show is going to be in town for that weekend, and it'll give people a little bit of entertainment while they're enjoying the 225 vendor booths there, and all kinds of great food and activities going on. So
you talked about this latest issue. I haven't seen it yet, but I think I've seen a picture of the cover. It's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have the UP, the famous, I think it's getting very famous, the UP Cougar on the cover. It looks fantastic. Just a magnificent looking photo of a cougar caught in the UP and verified by the DNR and everything. And it's fascinating. It's got people fascinated by it. It's a great colored daytime shot. So we're really happy that our readers shared that with us, and we can share it with everybody else, because it certainly is. It's interesting, that's for sure.
I think it's the most impressive picture of a Michigan cougar that I've ever seen. Is this a trail cam picture?
It's a trail cam picture, yes, indeed, yes.
Man.
Full color, daylight, so it's all unique. You're right, Mike. And it's a great shot. And he had a couple of good shots of it, and we're so happy that Keith Forte shared that with us. And I think it'll draw a lot of interest, and it'll get people interested in seeing this for sure. And on top of that, we had another cougar cover come in almost simultaneously from another reader, and of course, it's more of a dark, you know,
like most
photo.
of them are, yeah.
Most of them are, exactly. Daniel Murray so yeah, it's interesting. There's bound to be more and more with all the trail cameras and all the technology we have with the trail cameras. We're bound to see more and more cougars on our trail cameras. It's just going to have to happen. And I think that number that the DNR usually sees, 14 or 15, 16 a year, I'm sure it's going to go up with all the cameras out there.
Well, good point,
people
Tom.
that are entertained by trail cameras.
How can you not be entertained by trail cameras?
Yeah.
They let you see what's going on there. Tom, I got to let you go. I'll look forward to the big outdoor weekend coming up, the first weekend after Labor Day at the Emily City Fairgrounds, the Eastern Michigan Fairgrounds in Emily City. The website for Woods-n-Waternews is woods-n-waternews.com, woods-n-waternews.com. You can also find them on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram as well. I would encourage you to check them out. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, Captain John Littlefield will join me to talk a little fishing, to talk about the process of becoming a charter captain. Then Nick Green of MUCC talks about a phenomenal fishing weekend they had and a campaign MUCC is involved in to promote fishing. And this week's Ask Avery question comes from Randy Claramunt, the DNR Fisheries Chief.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And so glad to have you along with us as we are now officially in the summer season. We've kind of known it's been summer for a while, right? But now the calendar says summer as well. So I hope you get a chance this summer to get out and take advantage of the things that you want to do. You know, it's so easy to get so tied up in day-to-day stuff and work stuff and stuff around the house where it gets to be August. Okay, we've still got time. And then it's September and you look back on it and go, man, we didn't do what we wanted to do. So please make it a point to get out and do those things that you want to do. Anyway, I'm glad you're listening here to the Outdoor Magazine radio show. I like to make the distinction that this is first and foremost a radio program. And the best way to listen, if you can, is on one of my more than 30 local radio affiliates. For one thing, the radio stations get the content of the show before the podcast version is uploaded. Yes, I also do a podcast version of the show. It's identical to the radio show, but it's available online or actually anywhere you get your podcast from. I mean, my website, my Facebook page, YouTube, Audible. I mean, any place you listen to a podcast, you can hear the podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show. I do like podcasting. I do podcasts every month for my advertising partners, including Primal Outdoors, Offshore Tackle, Angler Quest Boats, Polar Craft Boats. In fact, when we're done here in the studio, we will record this month's Polar Craft podcast, so keep an ear out for those as well. Regardless, though, when you're listening to me, where you're listening to me, podcast, radio show, thank you. I do really appreciate it. I've been doing this a long time, and I wouldn't be able to still be sitting here in this chair in front of this microphone if you weren't listening, if you weren't following me on social media, and your support does mean a lot. A few years ago, I had one of the more interesting experiences of my life. I went through a charter captain's class to become a licensed charter captain. This is something that had been on my bucket list for a long time. You know, I used to go out and fish for fun. I still go out and fish for fun, but I look at these guys going by in these charter boats and go, man, that's pretty cool. And then I started doing a lot of charity fishing trips on the Angler Quest, and it was pointed out to me that I can't legally do that unless I'm a charter captain. So I thought, well, this is a good excuse. I will get my charter captain's license. So I went through a school called, at the time, Great Lakes Charter Training, and my teacher was Captain John Littlefield. He was the perfect guy to teach that class because John is very low-key. He's very calm. He's very relaxed, but he's very, very knowledgeable. And he is the guy who walked me through this class and got me through the class, so I am now a licensed charter captain. So I have to thank Captain John Littlefield for that. But he's also a working charter captain and a hardcore angler as well, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Captain, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Mike. I'm glad we were finally able to connect.
We've been trying to do this for a few weeks. You're pretty busy this summer, John.
Yeah, between charter fishing and I think the one time I was in the UP and didn't have a cell signal, so yeah, finally worked out this week. So
it did, and I appreciate it. But the picture you sent me from the UP looked beautiful. That must have been a great trip.
Yep, it's always nice to get up there, and it's good for the soul.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get away from the crowds. It's kind of nice.
Was that a work trip, or was that just a little vacation for you, John?
Nope, that was strictly personal time.
Do you get a chance to do much of that these days?
I guess I do. You just got to make time in your schedule, plan it a long time in advance, but I usually get up there once or twice a year.
I think you've got a real interesting story, John. You're a young guy. You got into the business of fishing at a young age. How did that happen? Is this something, have you always said, I want to be in the outdoor industry? How did this all happen?
That's a good question because it took a lot of time. There's a lot of different pieces to the story, but it's always something that I wanted to do ever from a young age. But knowing exactly how to do it or what facet of the industry, I wanted to be a part of was something that I didn't necessarily know. So to get to what I'm doing now, I think just kind of happened more or less. Because back in 2016, I went and got my captain's license just like you did.
How old were you when you did that, John? You were, 2016. How old were you?
I think I was 24.
Oh, I mean, I think that's young. I mean, you've got to be, I think, 21 to get it, but that's young to get your captain's license, isn't it?
Yeah, the way I looked at it, the sooner I got it, once you got it, you don't ever have to do it again. So whether
Thank
I
God.
started fishing then or...
Thank God you don't have to do it again.
Don't let it expire.
I won't.
Yep. So I did it at a young age, and I think I started my charter business in 2017. And actually, at the time that I took the captain's license class, my instructor, Captain Mel, approached me about teaching it, which was something I hadn't even considered doing. But the more we talked about it, the more interesting it sounded, and that kind of got me to where I am now.
And I mean, you teach classes. You have been teaching classes, not just in Michigan, but all across the country. You teach classes down in Florida too, haven't you?
Yep, I do 6 a year down in Florida, and then I've taught in Minnesota, Virginia. It's kind of a nationwide endeavor. So,
listen, I don't want to get too much into your business, but I understand there's some exciting things going on with you that we might actually. The school might actually become John Littlefield's school.
Yeah, that's actually in the works right now. I've been working with the Coast Guard kind of behind the scenes to get a new school up and running and get all the approvals I need. So right now we're not teaching at the moment, but probably within the next month or two, we should have all the approvals to be up and running.
Well, it's a service that I think is definitely needed. John, I have people come to me all the time say, Avery, where did you get your captain's license? I always send them to you. I mean, I hope these people are following through and you're hearing from these folks. I think there's a built-in market for your business, I think.
Yeah, I've actually gotten a lot of phone calls from people that you send my way. And I've got a long waiting list of people, too, that are interested once we get up and running that I'll get in touch with. So if there's anybody that wants their captain's license, they can still get a hold of me. And then once we're offering those classes, I can get in touch with them and get them signed up.
That sounds good. What's involved, for folks who don't know, what's involved? What is the process of getting your charter captain's license?
Well, it's a little bit of a time commitment. The class itself is 9 days. I guess that's the biggest thing is you got to be there for the 9 days. There's a prerequisite requirement. You need to have 360 days on the water beforehand. And then after that, just be present in class, and I'm pretty sure that we can get you through it if you're willing to put in the work. Well, there's a little bit of other stuff like physicals, drug tests, first aid, CPR and stuff, but we help you through that as well.
And there are a lot of hoops to jump through. I mean, and there should be. If people are going to pay you and trust you to take you out on the water, there should be hoops to jump through. There should be requirements, and there certainly is.
Yep, there's a lot of legal things that it's hard to get through all of it on your own. But on the first day of class, we walk you through all the paperwork and all the other little things that you're going to have to do. And even after you get out of the class, I get phone calls of people, and I help them through it until they have their license in hand. So it's definitely doable. It's achievable. As long as you're willing to put in the work in class, there's no reason that most people can't do it.
Well, and your advice, and now my advice to others is, as soon as you take the class, do the paperwork, get it all done. Don't let a month or so go by, because your mind gets a little bogged up and stuff. Do it right away. And John, I actually came back to you, and you helped me get all my paperwork together, and I appreciate it.
Yep, that paperwork. Your license is only good for 5 years before you have to renew it. So I get calls from people after 5 years, helping them through the renewal process. It's no big deal.
No big deal if you've got somebody like Captain John Littlefield to walk you through it. John, we got to take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this captain's process, but I also want to talk with you about fishing. You're an avid fisherman. You are a hardcore fisherman. You are a charter captain, so we will continue our conversation with Captain John Littlefield. His website is littlefieldsportfishing.com. That's littlefieldsportfishing.com. You can find him on social media as well. I would encourage you to follow Captain John Littlefield, because he posts some very interesting pictures. In fact, I think I will probably see John coming up here in a few weeks. I think he will probably once again fish in this year's Angler Quest Owners Tournament. That's on Saginaw Bay out of Linwood Beach. I think it's July 22nd. If you have an Angler Quest boat, I would encourage you to get involved in this tournament. It's a lot of fun. It's the single biggest gathering of Angler Quest boats you're going to find anywhere. You can sign up for that on the website anglerquestpontoons.com. That's anglerquestpontoons.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll wrap up our conversation with Captain John Littlefield. Then we'll turn our attention to Nick Green of MUCC, and we'll wrap up the hour with this week's Ask Avery question. That's coming up this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning is a leader in the archery industry, and they have been for more than 3/4 of a century now? The company started back when Roland Boning invented a material called ferrultite to glue broadheads to, at the time, were wood arrow shafts? These days, Boning continues to innovate, come up with new products, new designs, new manufacturing processes. I'm running a high-tech crossbow rig these days, and I've got Boning products on it. So they cover all aspects of the archery industry for target archers and bow hunters as well. Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING, boning.com. While you are online, please check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. From there, you can get to my social media outlets as well. And also jump over to LittlefieldSportFishing.com. That's the website of Captain John Littlefield, who is with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Cap, always a pleasure to talk to you. I appreciate your time.
No problem. I'm always happy to be here.
So what have you been doing lately? What kind of fishing have you been doing?
Pretty much exclusively been walleye fishing out on Lake Erie.
Lake Erie, man, is there any better walleye fishery in the world than Lake Erie?
I don't know. The way I've seen your pictures, looks like Saginaw Bay's not bad either.
Saginaw Bay's not bad, but it was interesting. I had Randy Claramunt, who is the fisheries chief for the DNR. What a pleasure it was to fish with him. And he was telling me that the walleye population on Lake Erie is exponentially larger than Saginaw Bay, which is just hard for me to even comprehend.
Yep, it's been pretty silly good the last few years, and this year especially. So
what's your program down there on Lake Erie, John? What are you running? How do you fish? All that good stuff.
Well, I used to be kind of a snob about, I never ran worms and all this. You know the type. That was me.
Don't give me this because I don't like crawlers. I'm a snob thing. I'm not falling for it.
I wasn't calling anybody out. I was just saying if there was a stereotype, I used to fall under that stereotype.
All right.
I used to run a lot of crankbaits even throughout the summer. I'd run clicker shads, flicker minnows, and they definitely work. But the last couple of years, I've had a lot more consistent results. Running a crawler program. So the last couple of years, that's especially this time of year with all the mayfly hatches going on, that's what I've been doing.
All right, so let's talk about this more. And listen, I have fun with the whole crawler thing. It's not that I'm a crawler snob. I just haven't run them much. But the other day I was out, and my buddy Nick Grillo was out. I was running crankbaits in shallow. He was out deep at crawlers, and he was knocking the snot out of them. But I got to be honest with you, John. I wouldn't know how to run a crawler. Tell me how to set up. How do we do this? Are we talking crawler harnesses? Are they spinners? I mean, what do we do?
Yep. Some guys call them crawler harnesses. Some guys call them spinners. But I run crawler harnesses with the number 5 Colorado blade on there. On the planer boards, it's almost exclusively 1 ounce inline weights. So those will fish suspended. And then I run 2 corner rods directly off the boat with a 3 ounce bottom bouncer fishing right on the bottom. So it's pretty simple.
Well, it's simple once you've done it, but since I really haven't done it, I don't know where to start. Is the type of blade, the size of blade, the color of the blade on this spinner, is that important?
Yeah, it is. Especially, I think that they're so effective right now because every night we're getting huge mayfly hatches and the fish are puking up bugs. So copper blades work really well, and then anything that's purple or pink mixed in seems to be catching more fish than the rest.
What speed do you troll these things at?
Usually I try and keep it under 1.6 for sure, but usually 1.4, 1.5 is kind of the most days what I'm doing.
How do you get the angler quest down that slow?
Well, it depends a little bit on the wind and current. If I've got if I can troll into the wind or I've got a little bit of current to troll into, I use trolling bags on the Angler Quest, and I can get my my big engine down to that speed a lot of days. And if I can't, I'll have to run the electric motor. I troll with the Suzuki if I can, and if I can't, I've got the motor guide to help get me down a little bit slower. So.
I am just amazed at how well these big horsepower, like I'm running a 300-horse MUCC, and that thing trolls down so slow and so beautiful and so smooth. It's pretty cool what they've done with these big outboards these days.
It is pretty incredible. I run the two bags, one out each side, and I've got a 300 Suzuki. And like I said, if I've got the right conditions, I can get down to 1.4 with it. So it's pretty amazing.
All right, so you've got spinners, crawler harnesses. You said with a 1 ounce weight off to the side, you're running them on what, offshore boards? Are you an offshore guy?
I'm an offshore guy. Yep, I run offshore boards. Usually when I'm doing a crawler program, I'll run 5 or 6 boards out each side and then 2 down rods. And lately the bite's been really good out by the Ohio line, pretty much straight out of sterling or bulls. And then the 1 ounce in lines we've been running 50 feet back has been really good from day to day. And yeah, that's the gist of it.
So are you on your board rods, are you running them all at 50 feet back?
Yeah, I try to do that. You know, obviously when you're out there almost every day, it's easy to stay in tune with what leads are catching the most fish.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to experiment, I'll stagger them, 30, 40, 50, 60, and so forth. It just seems like 50 has been a good number the last couple of days.
So if you're running them all at similar lead lengths, what's the trick not to tangle? Or because you're running weights, do you tend not to tangle? Or are you setting up your board so you release them and they drop out of the spread? Is that how you avoid tangles?
Well, if you want to avoid tangles 100% of the time, that's just wishful thinking.
Yeah.
But it's really not that big of a problem most of the time. I do not release my boards. About the only times we get a tangle is if there's a fish that we try to bring over the top of another fish. Mm-hmm. That's when it gets pretty sketchy. But, if you're going to stagger your lines with the weights, I'll run the shortest leads outside and then the deepest ones inside, and that avoids a lot of problems too.
As I'm thinking about this, one of the things that causes a lot of problems and tangles is, running crankbaits, flicker shads, flicker minnows, even good old-fashioned Hottentots, whatever it is. If they're not tuned just right, they get squirrely and they cause you problems. But these spinners, these crawler harnesses you're talking about with a weight, that's always going to track pretty true, isn't it?
Yep, and I like that about them. You never have to worry about if they're in tune. And the one thing, too, about weights is the slower you go, the deeper they're going to run, and the faster you go, the shallower they're going to run. So when you're bringing in a line, like an outside board, as long as you crank on it pretty fast, it usually comes over top of all the inside lines anyway, so that avoids a lot of tangles.
So then what does a bite look like at 1.2 miles an hour?
It definitely depends on day to day how the fish are biting, but when they're aggressive, it looks pretty much just like a crankbait. They rip it back pretty good. Sometimes it looks just like there's a weed on there. It just sags back maybe just a little bit. And the funny thing is sometimes those bites are the biggest fish. they just kind of grab a hold of it and swim with the boat.
I actually have been toying with the idea of running some crawlers just to try something different, to try some new tactics, and I know they're extremely effective. The thing that I'm hesitant, though, is, honestly, I'm used to going along 2.5 miles an hour, 2.7, pushing 3 miles an hour. To go at 1.2, 1.5 miles an hour, it just would drive me crazy. Is that just a mindset you've got to put yourself in?
Yep, you got to overcome that mindset. It was kind of painful at first because I mean, when I troll flicker shads in the summertime, sometimes that's 3 miles an hour or more.
Yeah.
So to cut that in half was kind of a big change. But one thing that I like about crawlers that we haven't talked about is, at least out on Lake Erie this time of year, there can be floating weeds that'll drive you crazy. It makes it hard to fish through them. By having that big inline weight ahead of your spinner, that catches a lot of those weeds and keeps your bait fishing. So I like that aspect about the spinner, because if, with cranks and spoons, if you get a little weed on there, that pretty much kills that lure. So
yeah,
I feel like I can fish a little bit better with all the floating weeds running spinners versus any other presentation.
What about, I don't even know what to call them, the plastic scented baits that mimic real live bait? Are those an option? Because they would hold up a lot better than a crawler would, I would think.
They do. Some guys might use them. I just don't. The bait shops down there on Lake Erie, you can buy crawlers by the 100, and it's just, I guess to me, it seems hard to beat the real thing. Plus, you'd think that trolling worms, the bycatch, the junk fish and all that would be a nuisance, but it's really not as big of a deal as you'd think it is. So
I don't know. You've piqued my curiosity. It's something I've been thinking about for a while, and I've joked about it. I might just run crawlers just to prove people I'm not a crawler snob.
Yeah, I hate to convince you to be a crawler guy because you're going to go and get your nice boat all dirty with worm juice and that. But it's worth a try just for a change of pace at least.
Or at least I've thought about this, running them, I don't remember what they call, but some of these spoons have a crawler harness built into them. So you've got you got the spoon in the front giving action to your crawler harness. I'm fascinated by that too. I think that's an interesting concept, kind of the best of both worlds.
Yep, I've seen those too, but I've never tried them.
Well, maybe I'll ease my way into the crawler world by going that way first, John.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. Just something different.
Something
Another
different.
tool to have in your toolbox.
Exactly. Just something different. Hey, listen, always a pleasure. Let me know, if you would, please, when it's time to kick off your school, your captain school, your charter captain school officially, so we can put the word out, all right?
I will. You're the first guy on the list.
I appreciate that, John. Good fishing to you, and we'll talk again soon. That's Captain John Littlefield of Littlefield Sport Fishing. His website, littlefieldsportfishing.com. That's littlefieldsportfishing.com. From there, you can also get to his social media platforms. I would encourage you to check those out. Take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Nick Green of MUCC joins us. Nick has had some really good fishing, and I'm fascinated by what MUCC is doing right now to promote fishing in Michigan. And then we'll wrap up this week's second hour of this week's show with our Ask Avery segment. And that question comes from Randy Claramunt, the DNR Fisheries Chief. Appreciate you joining us this week here on the Outdoor Magazine radio show. You can hear the show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including the Twister 92.1 WTWS in Houghton Lake. In Lansing, it's WILS 1320 AM. And let's go north of the bridge to Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard as they have for me. In fact, I got a big project, not big for me, but project coming up. The guys from Reader are going to come over here in the next couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to that. I will show you the progress of that project on my Facebook page. Keep an eye out for that. Their website, readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. I told you Nick Green of MUCC. Nick's a great guy. Great guy. He's doing a great job at MUCC. He's their chief information officer. He's very active in the outdoors. He's very good at keeping on top of and track of all the different issues and things going on in Lansing. But he also loves to get out in the woods and on the water in the woods as well. And last week, Nick had a very interesting weekend in the outdoors. We'll welcome him back here to the Outdoor Magazine show. Nick, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm trying to not sweat sitting outside right now.
Listen, I saw some pictures that you posted last week of your fishing adventures. Man, you were into some nice fish.
We were. I had the fortune to be up in northern Michigan, and, you know, our rivers up there have kind of plentiful trout, walleye. Lakes have walleye, too. But our big kind of mayflies of June, the Saginaw limbata, are coming off. So it's kind of like the fly fisher's dream here in Michigan, and if you're open to staying up past dark when they come down and die and the trout start to eat them, it can really be your chance at not only the biggest brown trout of a lifetime, but obviously on a fly too. So it's a really special thing that we have here in Michigan, and it's something I've enjoyed doing for a decade or more, and it's probably the thing I've done longest and continuously in the outdoor world. I seem to move between hunting techniques and things, but fly fishing and chasing brown trout on big mayflies has always been a big good thing for me.
Well, it looked like a lot of fun, but you didn't catch that big walleye fly fishing after dark in the river, did you?
We didn't. So we it's kind of our game. We fish, stay out late, and then we get up mid-morning and we go try to troll some deep waters. That walleye was in about 50 feet. It was a 30-inch walleye. We didn't weigh it, but it was a substantial walleye, the biggest one I've put in the boat in my short walleye fishing career.
It was a tank. Now, was this for fun, or was this part of the promoting fishing initiative project you guys are involved in MUCC?
This was just for fun. You know, that's the beauty of kind of what I do in conservation and for MUCC and my employer is that, you know, I am able to kind of mesh my work and my play. So sometimes there aren't those clear lines. So when I take photos or post things, you know, I'm always working, especially if I'm in the outdoor world. And the benefit of that is I get to take days off and go hex fishing when the hex are rolling. So it wasn't necessarily work, but it always turns into work.
Well, and I can relate to that very much for sure. But tell me about this project. I don't have it in front of me, and I can't think of the name of it, but it's a very interesting project you guys are involved in.
Yeah, we're running a Fight for Fish sweepstakes right now. And what we're doing is it's with $35 or more entry, you'll get a membership to MUCC. And then you're also entered to win one of 4 prizes, and that's a fly fishing float in northern Michigan with the guys from Mangled Fly, a Lake Michigan charter with Dutchman Charter Service, a walleye jigging trip with me or someone from Michigan Out of Doors, and then a $500 Jay's gift card. So, you know, really what this is about is kind of highlighting all of MUCC's policy victories, all of our education initiatives, everything we've done for our youth camp to help with fisheries in Michigan. You know, it's really trying to take that, elevate it, let folks know what we're doing and help them try to spread the word for us and help be our ambassadors. And then, you know, if you get entered into it, you also have a chance to win one of 4 great prizes. So something we're excited about. You can go to mucc.org. It's the very first picture on the banner there. You can find it pretty easy, or search hashtag Fight for Fish. And there are posts all over.
I love the concept. Now, in the past, you guys have been involved in similar projects as fundraisers to help pay for the consent decree battle. This is something separate from that, Nick?
This is kind of an MUC-specific fundraiser. You know, again, at the end of the day, we're one of the A-Share members on the coalition. That coalition has paid over $200,000 in attorney's fees towards the consent decree legal battle we're in. So all of the dollars go there regardless of how they come in for MUCC. We're a part of CPMR, that coalition. We're a part of many throughout Michigan. So, yeah, it's a fundraiser for us, but that fundraiser is also ongoing. You can go to protectmiresources.com, and that's fighting gillnet expansion throughout the northern Great Lakes and really the treaty water.
All right, Nick, I appreciate that. Before we let you go, anything else real quick we should talk about, or are we good to go?
I think we're good to go. The legislature's trying to finish up a budget. Hopefully they'll go on summer break, come back in the fall ready to get some bills moved. So we'll be talking to you probably early fall about commercial guiding, commercial fishing.
Excellent. We'll be talking to you before then. Nick Green of MUCC, the website mucc.org, mucc.org. And if you want to follow Nick, personally on Instagram, he is fly shot junkie, fly_shot_junkie, and he posts some very, very cool stuff. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery segment. And the way this segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show, your chance to ask me a question or maybe pose a question you would like me to forward on to somebody else. This week's question is directed at me, and it comes from Randy Claramunt, the Fisheries Chief of the DNR. So that's coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. And just a reminder, the way the Ask Avery segment works, this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You know, is there a question you want answered? Is there a question you want me to answer? Is there a question you want me to forward onto somebody in the DNR or MUCC or somebody that maybe I have access to a little bit more easily than you do? The best way to get those questions to me is to send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That is the email address to get in touch with me for all subjects, topics, questions, criticisms, comments. Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Now, sometimes people will post their Ask Avery questions or send them to me in a social media message. That's fine, but just know that I might not see it right away and I might not see it at all, because all these different social media messaging platforms are driving me crazy. So I encourage people, if you have something that you want to make sure you get to me, send me an email to Mike at MikeAveryOutdoors.com. This time around, the question does not come via email. This time around, the question came to me directly from Randy Claramunt, who I had a chance to fish with last week on Saginaw Bay. Randy is the new Fisheries Chief for the Michigan DNR. And he said, hey, Mike, because we were talking about the fact that I've been out there a long time and covered that fishery for a long time. He said, what is your most memorable trip or most memorable trips out here on Saginaw Bay? And I thought, Randy, that's a very interesting question. And I gave him a couple of examples while we were on the water. But I've given this more thought, and I want to add one more. So keep in mind that I've been covering the Saginaw Bay walleye fishery since the mid-'80s or whatever it was that they brought it back. I mean, since the early days. And do you hear that noise? Is that just in my phones? Do you hear it? No, it must be just my phones. Okay. The early days of the Saginaw Bay walleye fishery. And there was a time when they brought the fish back, when the DNR and the sportsmen's groups around the bay brought the fish back, that anglers didn't know how to catch them yet. And the Coast Guard and the DNR, they put us on a Coast Guard boat. They took us out in the shallow water, the skinny water that I call it now, and we watched the commercial anglers pull their nets, and they were full of walleye. Okay, bingo, proof that they're here. That's a little background. So one of my most memorable trips on Saginaw Bay was actually August 28th of 1988. And the only way I know it was August 28th of 1988 is I had to look at the plaque underneath the fish. I caught a 31-inch walleye. Now, this is the end of August. A 31-inch walleye out of Saginaw Bay, trolling a real deep crank right off the bottom. I was fishing with Conservation Officer Nick Heary, now retired Conservation Officer Nick Heary. The thing was only 8 pounds, 4 ounces. 31 inches, but 8 pounds and 4 ounces. 8-pound, 4-ounce fish, yet I decided to get it mounted because A fish that size caught in 1988, in my mind, would have been one of the first fish they stocked in Saginaw Bay. So to me, it had great sentimental value. So that was one of my most memorable trips. The other one, one of the other ones, the last fishing trip my dad ever made. My dad was an avid angler. He was a hardcore angler. He taught me how to troll Great Lakes fish, primarily salmon. But he also loved to walleye fish, too, so I used to get him over on this side to fish walleye. He was in such bad shape, he was in such rough shape, that he had to crawl down the dock to get into the boat. We had to help him into the boat, help him out of the boat. I mean, he was near the end. But he wanted to go fishing one more time. So I took him out on the angler quest. We took him out in the skinny water and caught him a couple of fish. It wasn't pretty, but man, was it rewarding, and man, was it intense, and man, was it memorable. And my most recent memorable trip on Saginaw Bay was a couple of years ago, fishing with my 4 grandkids. My wife Denise was with us. We had the 4 grandkids out, and we caught a tagged walleye that was worth $100. It was a $100 tag. 4 grandkids, $100 tag. They each got $25 off that fish. And so that was a pretty cool trip, too. I have so many wonderful memories of fishing that body of water throughout the years. But when Randy Claramunt said, what are your most memorable ones? Those are the 3 that come to the top. If you have a question for the Ask Avery segment, whether it's something you want me to answer directly or pass on to somebody else, please send me an email to mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And in the subject line, put Ask Avery. So it'll be very obvious for me and something that'll be easy for me to find, easy for me to put in the appropriate file, and then hopefully easy for me to answer or find somebody who can answer your question. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. And as always, a thank you to our friends at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. We will take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 3, Richard P. Smith, and he is not happy. He is not happy with the way that the upcoming deer hunting regulations have been handled, the changes that have been made. And I got to tell you, I don't disagree with him. Richard P. Smith and wild game chef Dixie Dave Minar coming up in hour 3 of Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. Here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network, on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan, on the first official weekend of summer. Been an interesting summer season so far, hasn't it? I don't know where you are in the state, what your weather has looked like. But I'll tell you this. Where I am, we need some rain bad. I mean, we're in full-blown drought conditions. And the wind, these northeast winds are making it real tough for anglers to get out on Saginaw Bay. I'm doing my best to get out there when Mother Nature will allow. You know, if you are involved in outdoor activities, like many of us are, I don't care if it's hunting or it's fishing, Mother Nature often has the ultimate say in controlling what happens on that trip. Either the weather cooperates or fights us, and then you've got fish and critters to worry about too. But isn't that part of the challenge, the excitement, the experience? For me, it is. You know, in our world today that's so technologically advanced, even me, I spend much of my day at a keyboard. I press a button, I press a mouse, I look at a phone, and when in the digital world, when you do something, it reacts immediately, and it's gratifying, and it almost always responds to what you want it to do. But then you get out in the natural world, you get out in Mother Nature, and she doesn't always cooperate. In fact, sometimes she feels like she never wants to cooperate. So to me, that's part of the appeal, is to get outdoors, get out in the real world, to get out in a world that you don't have the ultimate say in, that somebody else, something else is going to have an impact on your day. So that's one of the reasons I love this outdoor lifestyle. I also love it because it's provided me with a very enjoyable and rewarding career over many, many years. And when I look around this outdoor industry here in Michigan, there are a lot of us in kind of similar situations who have been involved in the outdoors, covering the outdoors, promoting the outdoors, reporting on the outdoors for a long, long time. Richard P. Smith is one of those guys. Now, I am not even beginning to put myself in the same category as Richard. Richard is an expert hunter. He is an expert when it comes to black bear. He is an expert when it comes to whitetails. He's also an expert at trying to keep an eye on the things in Lansing and decipher and keep an eye on what's going on down there. And that's one of the reasons he's joining us this week on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Richard, welcome back. How are you?
Okay, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing good. Listen, Richard, before we get to the subject at hand, look back on your career, if you would. How have things changed over the years, or have they, from your perspective, really haven't changed that much?
Oh, they've changed tremendously. Look at cameras. You mentioned electronics. The photography, still photography, video photography, it's all advanced tremendously over the years that I've been involved in photographing. I used to run out of rolls of film, only 36 exposures. Now I can shoot hundreds digitally.
Yeah.
Major advances there. And, of course, I started writing on a typewriter, a manual typewriter, and then electric typewriter. And now I'm using a computer, of course. Tremendous changes and advances. The electronics make me more efficient, obviously. It's amazing, the changes.
And you're so well known for so many things, but one particular thing stands out in my mind, and that was a series of images you shot out west of a game warden or a biologist and a grizzly. Now, that was long before the age of digital photography, wasn't it?
Yes, I shot that on film. I had to send it Federal Express to get it processed to look and see what I captured on film. And fortunately, I did capture some quality images of what happened. That was a long time ago. In fact, just last year, that game warden passed away at 90 years old, 92 years old, something like that. That was 30-some years ago.
You know, that's interesting, too. You say you had to send it off to see what you got because you knew what you saw with your eye. But in the old days, we didn't know what we had on film until it was processed. These days, we just look at the digital image on the back of our camera.
Exactly.
But remind me the story of that, Richard. How did you get to be in that place? What were you doing out there?
Well, I was a member of the Outdoor Writers Association of America, and we had our annual conference at Kalispell, Montana. And there was a local game warden who was a member of the organization who was in the process of live trapping a grizzly that had killed a cow on a local Indian reservation. He asked if I was interested in going along if they caught the bear to relocate it, and I said, sure. And they did catch the bear. It was an adult male, about 500 pounds,
put radio collar ear tags on it, and we took it to the Bob Marshall Wilderness Area to relocate it. It was a long drive, but the bear had recovered from the sedative during that drive, and it wasn't very happy. The warden stopped on a bridge over a creek to let the bear out. He said they're normally thirsty after being drugged and being in a trap for hours. But the trap the bear was in was an aluminum trap in the back of a pickup truck. The warden got out, lifted the door, had a hard time lifting the door. The bear pushed it open and jumped out, and the warden said go to the driver of the truck the trap was in so he would drive away from where the bear was. Well, the bear heard the warden and keyed in on him and reared up on his hind legs, tried to grab him. In fact, the bear grabbed the trap as the truck drove forward, pulling the trap with the warden on top of it, out of it. Oh. And the warden fell on top of the bear.
Oh, and you got this on film?
Yeah.
Where were you at?
I was in the back of I was in the open bed of another pickup truck about 50 yards from where the release took place. Todd Smith, who was the editor of Outdoor Life magazine at the time, was in the passenger seat of that pickup truck. There wasn't room for both of us to be inside that truck to photograph, so I got in the open bed. And the warden told the driver of the truck I was in that if the grizzly came toward us, to turn the truck into the bear so it wouldn't get at me in the open bed of the truck. But the bear grabbed the warden by a leg and broke his leg. But fortunately, the warden had a .357 Magnum handgun in a holster on his side, and he fortunately was able to kill the bear with the handgun. In fact, it was the sixth and last bullet that killed the bear. Most of the bullets ricocheted off the top of the bear's skull. It was so thick. But the driver of the pickup truck the trap had been in stopped and got out. The grizzly looked up at the driver of that truck, and Lou Kiss was the warden's name. Lou put the last bullet in the bear's neck, and that killed it.
Oh, my gosh. And you watched this whole thing. You photographed this whole thing.
Yeah. And what happened in the UP a month or two earlier made it possible for me to take those photos the way I did. The moose lift was underway. One of the moose lifts was underway in the UP at the time. It was 1987 or 85, I forget which. But a cow moose came out of a crate, and it saw a conservation officer that was in front of the trap videotaping. That cow charged that warden and started kicking him with her front feet. And rather than photograph that, I had my mouth open. I was caught by surprise. I didn't get those photos, and that made me mentally prepare to shoot whatever happened on the grizzly release.
Wow. And I remember the moose lift very well as well.
Yeah, I saw you there.
That's right. We were there. Richard, hang tight. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. We're talking with Richard P. Smith, noted outdoor writer, black bear expert, and whitetail expert as well. You can find out more about him online at richardpsmith.com. That's richardpsmith.com. When we come back, we will get to the subject at hand, which is changes or regulations coming up with the fall deer hunting season. What we thought was going to happen isn't going to happen, and something that I thought was a slam dunk, and that is involving crossbows in the late season in the UP, got taken out or shot down or whatever. Richard has the details more than I do, but I got to be honest. I look at some of these things and say, this is politics, because there's no biology. So if it's not biology, what is it? Social science? What is social science? Politics? I don't know. Richard will have a much more interesting perspective on this than I. And after the break, I will pick his brain on this and more right here on Outdoor Magazine. can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN. You can hear us in Port Huron on WPHM 1380 AM. And north of the bridge in Manistee, WTIQ 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots. Michigan-based, family-owned Killer Food Plots. You know I love those combination. Michigan-based, family-owned. Does it get any better than that? But the folks at Killer Food Plots are doing a great job in helping to educate people around the state about how to put in a food plot, how to get the most out of it. And there have been challenges this year, obviously. With the drought conditions across most of the state, it has been a challenge. Well, the folks at Killer Food Plot can help you get started. They can do property management. They can put your food plot in for you. Now, we're getting to the end of that window of opportunity, but you've still got time. Go to their website, killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. And you'll see what Rich Krazan and the folks there at Killer Food Plots have to offer. The website, killerfoodplots.com. While you are online, I would encourage you to check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. And go over to this website, richardpsmith.com. Now, obviously, you know richardpsmith.com is the website of Richard P. Smith, noted outdoor writer, outdoor photographer, outdoor videographer, black bear expert, whitetail expert. And, Richard, I know that you're not real happy about some of the regulations for this upcoming fall deer season.
Yeah, I get frustrated with UP deer hunters being discriminated against. As you mentioned earlier, there was a proposal or a recommendation from the DNR to legalize the use of crossbows in the UP during the late archery season, and they have not been legal since crossbows were legalized during archery season. We've been able to use them during the early archery season, but not the late archery season since 2009. But all the hunters in the Lower Peninsula can use crossbows during the entire archery season. And there was a recommendation from the DNR also to allow antlerless deer to be taken by bow hunters over the entire UP like we could for more than 50 years. Prior to 2015, with no negative impacts on the deer population. Both of those recommendations were rejected by the Natural Resources Commission without any biological justification for rejecting them. In fact, there's no biological reason not to allow bow hunters to shoot antlerless deer in the UP or to allow crossbows during the late archery season. None whatsoever.
So if the recommendations are made by professional wildlife managers and they're turned down, as you say, with no biological premise, what is the reason for it, Richard? Why does something like this happen? If the DNR goes to the NRC and says, this is what we want, how can the NRC say, no, we supersede you? I mean, I know they can supersede you, but under what expertise do they have to do that?
Well, they don't have any expertise to do it, but they have heard there's a group of hunters in the UP, many of who do not bow hunt, who are calling the shots for everyone else. They have the perception that crossbows are more effective than compounds for harvesting deer in the UP, which is inaccurate, totally false. And they have a perception that crossbows would dramatically increase the antlerless harvest in the UP, negatively impacting the deer population, which is also totally false. But that's who the Natural Resources Commission is listening to.
See, I knew you would have the backstory on this.
Yeah, and they've been doing it the entire time crossbows have been legal, preventing UP hunters from hunting with crossbows that they paid good money for to be able to use during the entire archery season. But because of input from hunters who are ignorant of the use of crossbows, many of who have not used crossbows, it's negatively impacting recreational opportunities for everyone, including people in the Lower Peninsula who want to come to the UP and hunt in December.
Well, I think you hit on an interesting point, negatively impacting recreational opportunities, because as you well know, that late season can be cold, it can be uncomfortable, you're sitting there for a long time in the cold, and to be able to draw a compound is much tougher in that late season than it is October 1st. So yeah, crossbows become a great tool, especially in that late season.
And especially the reason crossbows were legalized during archery season in Michigan by a previous Natural Resources Commission was to allow senior citizens like me and many other in the UP to continue hunting who could no longer hunt with a compound. But the Natural Resources Commission doesn't agree with that.
Okay, another interesting point you bring up. Yes, it's not like all hunters have the option of shooting their compound or their crossbow. There are a lot of hunters who only have the option of a crossbow. So if you can't shoot a crossbow in the late season, you've effectively taken away their late season bow hunting.
Exactly. Exactly. It's unfortunate. And the data shows that the harvest would be minimal. We had required registration of deer last year. The DNR recommendation pointed out that only 38 deer were harvested during the late archery season in the high snowfall zone in the UP, the area that these people who are opposed to crossbows are concerned about. Only 38 deer were harvested in the high snowfall zone last December.
Okay, so I'm looking at this thinking, okay, if there's no biological reason, there must be a political reason. However, then when you tell me it's a group of hunters who are pushing for this, does the DNR and does the NRC have a responsibility to listen to its constituents and try to take their wants and desires into account?
They're supposed to listen to public input, which is fine. However, according to Proposal G, which is a law passed by the voting public in 1996, the commission is supposed to use the best available science, not opinion, in making decisions. They clearly have not done that. This is the second time the commission has rejected those recommendations from the DNR. In 2021, they did the same thing. And I tried to appeal those decisions then, but I found out that you have to file within 21 days in order to successfully do so. And I did so after 21 days. So it wasn't successful.
Well,
I would like to see these decisions appealed now within the 21-day period. However, I can't afford to finance another appeal. I was trying to locate some businesses, archery manufacturers, sporting goods stores, anyone who would be willing to finance an appeal. But the time period is so short, it's tough to get financial support.
And it's tough for one person to fight the process, the system.
It is. But, I mean, there are other people who don't support the decisions of the Natural Resources Commission, but it's hard to get them all together and communicate.
Yeah, it is, and that's been the challenge of trying to get hunters and anglers together for a long time, right? Because we're not usually joiners, we're not really people who want to get together, and that's one of our downfalls is the outsiders, the opposites, the antis are good at banding together and working together, and we're not.
Yes, unfortunately, the hunters I'm talking about are anti-hunting hunters. They're taking away the opportunity for other hunters to save deer for themselves, or that's their mindset.
Okay.
Anti-hunting hunters are a major problem in the UP.
So what are you asking for? I mean, you got your statewide audience right now. What's the real point you want to get across, Richard?
Well, if somebody has several $1,000s are willing to donate to appeal these Natural Resources Commission decisions, that would be terrific. Give me a call. Next week is the 21 days is up next week. So I hired an attorney last time who did most of the writing for the appeal. That would reduce the cost of another appeal now, but it would still be several $1,000. I ended up paying $6,700 to file the appeal last time.
Out of your own pocket?
Well, no, there were donations. I had a GoFundMe page, and I got some donations. I was hoping to get enough donations to cover the entire cost, but that did not happen.
Well, it show the fact that you were willing to do any of it shows that your commitment to this process and your love for our natural resources and the tradition of hunting here in Michigan, Richard.
I just hate to see. Not only are we losing recreational opportunity, which we're losing deer hunters all the time. Why take away opportunity from those who are still wanting to hunt? And it's poor management of our deer population. Remove the opportunity for hunters to harvest deer so they can die during our severe winters. That makes no sense.
As always, when I hear when I hear you make these statements, it's like, okay, a light bulb goes off, and you help me understand the situation better. And I always appreciate that, Richard, and that's why I always enjoy our conversations.
Well, I enjoy our conversation, too. And by the way, before I forget, congratulations on your Ontario bear.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a great hunt. You know me, I love bear hunting, and to get a chance to go up there in the Ontario bush and just sit out there in the middle of nowhere. And I avoided the wildfires and got myself a bear. So thank you for that. It was a great hunt. And a reminder, Monday, the 26th, Michigan hunters find out whether they got their elk tag or their bear tag. And you and I should talk about that pretty soon coming up here in the next few weeks.
Sure. Sounds good.
All right, Richard, appreciate that. Thank you for the insight, the information, and the knowledge, as always. RichardPSmith.com. That's RichardPSmith.com. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, a few more things I want to talk about, a few more things I want to clarify, a few more things I want to wrap up, a few more things I want to expound on, a few more things I want to chat about. And then, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I don't know what recipe he has this week. I want to get Dave out walleye fishing. I got a bunch of trips I've got to take care of here, but as soon as I get those wrapped up, I want to get Dave out on Saginaw Bay chasing some walleye. We'll take a break. Lots more coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Sandusky, excuse me, on WMIC 660 AM, 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM 580 AM. And you can hear us in Saginaw on WSGW 790 AM, 100.5 FM. I am in the studios of WSGW right now. But for these 3 hours, I like to call this one corner of the building the Outdoor Magazine Studio. And I have a logo, a graphic behind me that kind of proves that. I'm here with a new face. Matthew, doing a great job. Appreciate that, Matt, very much. Also appreciate the fact that this segment of the show is brought to you by Michigan-based Whack-'em and Plack-'em. It's a really cool and kind of a unique way to show off your trophies. You can use them with shoulder mounts, European mounts, even fish. For details, check out the website, nontypicalinnovations.com. That's nontypicalinnovations.com. All right, let me look at my list here of things that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so it is officially summertime, right? Summertime season. I hope you get a chance to get out and take advantage of the summer season. I know you're busy with work. I know you're busy with stuff around the house. I know it's graduations. I know, weddings, I got that. I got one coming up at the end of the summer myself for my daughter. So I get it. But if we don't take the time, this time of year, summertime, when most people are out vacationing and enjoying themselves, when it gets to be January and it gets to be February, you're going to look back and say, man, I wish we would have whatever. Do it now. Make it a point, because sometimes it's not always easy. I mean, you've got to make yourself accountable to do the things in real life that you dream about and doing in your mind. Also, these, sorry for the bug in my, frog in my throat here. I think I swallowed a mayfly. These northeast winds, the drought and the northeast winds. You'd think with northeast winds we wouldn't have a drought. Mother Nature's been screwy. Food plots are having a hard time. Farmers are having a hard time. Lawns are drying up. Maybe by the time you hear this show, maybe there's going to be a big rainstorm that I don't see coming up in the forecast in the next couple of days. I hope so. Wouldn't that be great? Get an inch of rain. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But the northeast winds are just wreaking havoc with us on the big water. One more thing I wanted to talk about, too, is, a couple more things. Many of you heard a repeat Outdoor Magazine radio show last week. I apologize for that, sincerely and deeply. It hurts me to the core to find out that happened, because I recorded and produced a new show, as I have done every week for more than 30 years. I take this very seriously, this show, and I take it very seriously that you are giving me access to your world and taking up your valuable time. I would never waste your time by sloughing off and repeating a show. We did produce a new show last week. Unfortunately, because there are a lot of technological and technical things that have to happen with this show before you hear it. From the time I talk into this microphone here in the studio until you hear it, there are a lot of steps, a lot of processes. And sometimes things happen. Sometimes things happen that are beyond anybody's control. And that's what happened last week. It's nobody's fault, but there was a technical problem that happened after we recorded the show, before it was sent out to the local stations. And a lot of you heard a repeat show. And I can't tell you how bad that makes me feel. I wouldn't do that to you. If you didn't hear last week's show and you heard Richard P. Smith talking about it, I was able to take a bear in Ontario, hunting there in White River with Ron St. Louis of Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters. Hunted hard for 4 days. I mean, a lot of time in the blind, and enjoyed every minute of it. Only saw one bear, and he came in 2 hours before dark on the 4th day of the hunt. And I shot him. And he's now being made into bear brats by my friends at Michigan Brand Meats. So it was a great hunt. Loved it. In Michigan here now, on Monday the 26th, hunters will find out if we got our Michigan bear tags and if we got an elk tag. I'm telling you right now, you didn't get an elk tag. And I didn't get an elk tag. And neither did 40,000 other people who applied, didn't get an elk tag, or whatever the number is. But somebody did. And you'll find out Monday the 26th. Same thing with the bear tags. So it's time to start thinking already about this fall hunting season, which I can't get over it. Wednesday Night Live next week, or this week coming up, the 28th, I think we're going to feature somebody from the Michigan Wildlife Council. In a week and a half, July 5th, we're going to be out on Saginaw Bay doing a Wednesday Night Live out of Linwood Beach Marina with Mr. Angler Quest himself, Brad Dupuis, and Nick DeShano of Offshore Tackle. We're going to be trolling offshore boards and spoons for Saginaw Bay walleye. I would encourage you to check that out. My email address, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. My website, mikeaveryoutdoors.com. From there, you can get to all my social media outlets. I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. Let me know what you're thinking, what you like, what you dislike. Ask Avery questions, lots more. Mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us. I do appreciate your time. I hope you're having a great weekend. If you're listening to the broadcast version of the show on the weekend, if you're listening to the podcast during the week, I hope you're having a great day as well. And I hope those plans involve something fun outdoors. If you have been with me here on the show before, you know I like to wrap up each week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, and he joins us once again. David, welcome back. How you doing, buddy?
Really good, Michael. Are you enjoying the new season, the summer season?
It's officially summertime. Isn't that great? But I tell you what, I could do it all without all these northwest or northeast winds.
Isn't it? I'm glad I don't go boating too much anymore.
Man. Hey, how are your food plots looking with it being so dry?
Well, I got to disc them up one more time. We don't put any kind of chemicals on our food plots, and so I just keep disking them up throughout the summer until I'm going to plant soybeans this year.
Oh, okay.
So probably within the week I'll have them in the ground.
Nice. Well, let's hope you get some rain after that. And what about a recipe, David? What do you have in mind for this week?
About a creamy walleye with dill sauce.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nice summer dish. It's kind of light and airy, you know what I mean? So
sure.
Anyway, this is going to be for 4 portions. You need about 4 8-ounce or 10-ounce boneless, skinless fillets, a couple of eggs beaten up, some flour, the juice of a lemon, anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of dried dill weed, or you could use fresh and chop it. It's probably going to be pretty close to getting some fresh dill in the market. So, in a couple of 3 cloves of garlic chopped real fine, 1/2 a bunch of green onions or scallions chopped, and you want to chop them fine, and that'll go on top after we're all done. 1 medium onion diced fine. A little bit of olive oil, 1/2 a jar of chicken gravy, some white wine to thin this out because it's going to cook down a little bit, so you don't want it all that thick. And a couple of tablespoons of sour cream. This is an optional. So I would say to dredge the fish in flour, then in the beaten up eggs. In a real nice hot saute pan, you're probably all going to be able to, the average house has enough room in a pan for probably 2 fillets with a small amount of olive oil. Brown it on both sides. Remove to a casserole. Then you can have the oven set at 350 degrees. And then after you get everything browned up, you want to make sure that the fish is skin side down, rib side up when you're done. And so you want to add the lemon, the green onions, the regular onions, some dill, the gravy, the white wine, and then you simmer that for just 4 or 5 minutes to break all of that flavor loose, kind of cook it down a little bit, make sure it's not too thin, not too thick. Put your fish on your dinner plate, and then spoon the sauce over the top, and then a little dollop of sour cream on top and a little sprinkling of scallions. And man, oh man, I'm telling you what, this is a great summer dish. It reminds me a lot of the nice hot weather we used to have in Florida when we would do a dish like this. And I'd say you could serve this with a fluffy white rice or a buttered noodle would go just wonderful.
Dave, I do think of you as a Michigan guy, but you did spend a lot of time down in Florida, didn't you, for several years?
From 1969 to 1981, I took my apprenticeships down there in Florida. Had a restaurant for about 4 or 5 years, and then I came back to Michigan.
Was the style of cooking down there different than what you did up here?
Yeah. There's very few people that cook like I do, because I took 2 different apprenticeships, one Italian and one French. And so I tried to I knew one day I was going to come back to Michigan and bring my knowledge back. And I've taught a lot of kids, and actually men too, how to cook, a nice way compared to just a way of throwing stuff in the deep fryer or microwaving it. So I feel very blessed that I was able to spend 35 years teaching people how to cook.
Well,
and on your TV show.
And entertaining people, not just teaching people how to cook, but entertaining people educating people, feeding people, having them enjoy this wonderful dining experience at the Old Dixie Inn and Oscar and Joey's. I mean, the number of people you have touched over the years is incredible, Dave.
It is, considering all of the wild game dinners and regular dinners and the weddings and everything that we've done. And I like to always carve something at the end of the buffet line, so I get to meet people and talk to people, and it's just been a great experience for I say 35 years. It's amazing what I've accomplished in my eye.
In my eyes as well, David. Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll talk to you next week.
Get out there and get some fishing in, Mike.
I'm working on it, that's for sure. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. A big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you. Because if you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to do this show. Then what would I do? What would I do? I'm turning 65 this week. I'm not ready to retire. What would I do? That's why your support is so important to me. Following me on social media, listening to the radio show, listening to the podcast. It does mean a lot to me. My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Let me know what you want on the show. Let me know what you don't like. Send me your Ask Avery segments. Send me questions. Send me your pictures. Let's see your fish pictures. Let's see your boating pictures. A lot of ways to stay in touch these days. Technology is kind of cool in that way. My name is Mike Avery, and I will talk with you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.